Hello everybody, welcome back to Newegg TV. I'm Steve. Today I'm going to do an overview on this ASRock M8 barebones system. For those of you who don't already know, a barebones system isn't actually a fully working system without 4 additional components that need to be purchased. One, you need to get a video card, followed by CPU, memory, and then a storage drive. That could be a solid state drive or a hard disk drive. But that being said, let's take a look at the front of the box. So I just want to let you guys know the M8 is unstoppable. But besides that, let's flip to the back and show you just a brief overview of the features themselves. Now at the top here, it does provide a 2T2R, that is a 2 transmitter, 2 receiver, 802.11ac Wi-Fi NIC that also has built-in Bluetooth 4.0. On top of that, they have something called the A command, which is basically a multi-purpose controller that has a dial on the outside and a button in the middle. I'll show you that a little bit later. It is a mini ITX standard motherboard that's inside this device. It's a Z87 chipset board. I'll get into that a little bit more. The G sensor essentially allows you to orientate the case in either a horizontal or vertical position, and the A command dial in the center will actually flip the OLED to whichever orientation you put the case in. Besides that, it also has Creative Soundcore 3D audio built in, as well as magnetic side covers with a small turnkey lock at the top that will allow you to lock that case and keep others from being able to have access to it. And then it has a 4-in-1 card reader in the very front and 3 months of XSplit premium service that will come along with it inside the box. So the dimensions of this particular chassis are 372 millimeters wide by 123 high and 400 millimeters in length. The motherboard is a Z87 chipset, as I mentioned before, specifically made for the M8 chassis itself. CPUs, it's going to support 4th generation or Haswell Intel Core processors, i7, 3, as well as Xeon, Pentium, and Celeron processors from Intel. The memory it can support, DDR3 SO-DIMMs, 1600, 133, and 1066 megatransfers per second. A total of 16 gigabytes of RAM, 8 per DIMM slot. VGA slot, I'm going to go over that a little bit later in depth, but right now we're just going to say it's a 1 dual slot card spacing that they allow with a riser card, but like I said, I'll show you that in just a moment. Optical drive does come with it, and it is a CD-DVD rewritable drive. We'll get into that in just a moment. Storage, it supports 1 3.5-inch drive and 1 2.5-inch drive, or 5 2.5-inch drives. That sounds really confusing, but that's because the design of the chassis itself is set up to accept one or both. In fact, you could actually do 2 2.5-inch drives and 1 3.5-inch drive. Like I said, though, I'm going to show you that as soon as I can open up this case and get my hands on it. Wi-Fi, we already mentioned. The front I/O, you're going to get a little bit more about that in a moment. So let's go ahead and open up the box and take a look at it. All right, so here's all the accessories that come inside the box. I'm going to start off with the disc. This particular disc does come with some Norton software as well as the drivers for the device, and I want to mention also that, of course, like all devices that have to do with electronics, you're always going to want to go to the manufacturer's website. So definitely head over to ASRock's website and get the newest drivers before you get started installing. And it also has a gift certificate for 3 months of XSplit Premium Edition. So the keys on the other side, I'm not going to flip to show you that, but otherwise you do get that. So if you're a gaming streamer and you're interested in this particular case, it's something to think about. Here is the sort of the quick install guide, and it's fairly large. So I'm going to try and unfold this for you. Just a moment while I do that. And I give you quite a bit to look at in terms of installation. So you have all these little pictograms showing exactly how to install the different components that aren't already installed in the system, because remember, you are going to need to have those extra 4 components. So keep that in mind. And they do give you quite a bit to help you if it's your first time around. We also have videos on our YouTube channel that Paul did that are actually quite educational, if I don't say so myself. Anyway, and then it has a sort of an anatomical representation of where everything is. So if you're not familiar with computers or this case in general, it's going to help you figure out where everything is and where you're going to need to start when you're installing some of this equipment. So moving right along, we also have the user manual itself. It's actually quite hefty. Majority of it here is some of the same information showing you how to install the different components that you're going to need to install, and as well as some other information for the front panel connectors and a little bit about some of the software too that comes in it. So that's actually very helpful. Now in front of me I do have several tools. First and foremost is the screwdriver set that they give you. It's actually got both the Phillips and the standard size tips here, some larger than others, as you can see. So they're basically trying to provide with you everything you need right out of the box. So if you don't have any tools of your own, you will be able to use theirs. Speaking of that, they also give you a 6mm hex screwdriver as well, helping you to remove the the 8 bolts that are all the way around the outside of the case. A little bit unorthodox for chassis, but they do give you the tools that you do need for that, as well as a set of tubular keys I mentioned earlier that help you to remove the magnetized covers of the chassis. I'll show you that in just a moment. Also, they give you a total of, 2, 4, 6 different SATA cables. These two are quite a bit shorter. I'd say these are probably about like 4 inches or so, but that's just because the setup of this particular case actually has everything really tight together, so something like this is going to help if you want it to stay really clean looking. Besides that, these are also backwards compatible from SATA Rev 3, 2, and all the way back to 1. And we have an AC adapter, which has looks like the laptop style connector on one end. Important when you need to have the power for this system. They also give you a it's a VGA support that will allow you to attach this to the top of a card if you have an overheight card of 130 to 140 millimeters, I should say, above the normal 110 to 120 millimeter height, standard height of a video card. Just allowing it to give it some rigidity and hold that card in place. Because like I said before, it also has a riser card in it and allowing that card to be installed horizontally. I'll show you that in a moment when we get inside the case. Then we have all your hardware screws that you're going to need for installation. Sorry, I'm going to turn that this way and get a little bit of reflection in there too. And we have some rubberized feet that will be attached to one of the side panels and allows you to orientate the case horizontally and keep it from scratching everything up. And finally on to the case itself. And as you guys can see, it's actually not a very orthodox case. It's primarily because B&W Group DesignWorks USA collaborated with ASRock to make this case be a little bit something different. I'm sure you guys know that the BMW Group has done a few other things in terms of cases out there. But that being said, we're talking about ASRock's M8. So I'll start here on the very front to show you the A command. This is the controller I mentioned before. It's a multi-purpose with an OLED display inside of it. The outside turns, the inside's a button. It also allows you to see the date and time. It'll allow you to adjust the volume. You can also set up power management settings, and it will actually display basic system information if you choose, something like the CPU frequency and usage or LAN usage, including another feature called APM data, which is essentially actions per minute showed up in this little display. And essentially what that is for RTS players out there that have very fast fingers across their peripherals, so their mouse and keyboard clicks will actually maintain a count every 60 seconds and tell you how often you've been clicking. So you can see how close you get to the 200 and 300 APM numbers out there that some of the pros are getting. Aside that, you can also adjust the case lighting as well with that particular controller. Next to that, we do have a light-on slim slot loading DVD-CD rewritable drive. Below that, we have 4 USB 3.0 ports, and hidden in this little cubby here is a little compartment that houses the 4-in-1 card reader, as well as 2 front audio ports for your microphone and headphones, leading back to that Creative Sound Core 3D card. Also, all the way around the case has these handles that utilize the 6mm Allen wrench that I showed you guys earlier. These case panels are magnetic, so they are removable. There's a little bit of a hook here that actually connects into the top. I'll show you in a moment where the key locks it in, so you can see exactly how these go on. Let me continue with the outside before I start talking much more about the inside of the chassis. So here at the back, you'll notice, actually, first you'll notice is that one of the expansion slot covers are missing, and that's because I think someone was playing around with this when I wasn't looking and having a little fun with it. But besides that, the rear I/O, we have the audio analog ports as well as the SPDIF Toslink out. We have 4 USB 3.0 ports as well as a gigabit NIC connection, as well as DisplayPort, HDMI, out for the iGPU on the processor that you might be choosing, depending on if it has an iGPU or not. And we have USB 2.0, 4 of them total, and an eSATA port. So if you wanted to connect another drive or whatnot to that, you absolutely could do that. The AC plug adapter here, and something I almost forgot to mention at the very top here is the Kensington lock. So if you wanted to have additional security, you could definitely secure with that. The kind of pattern that they're using across the case itself is sort of a series of T's and almost a Tetris-like pattern here to create ventilation and give it just kind of a different design look to it. But let me flip it down to the top of the case just so I can show you a couple more things. Behind here are two 70mm fans that are providing cooling, 2 here and 2 on the other side. And here's that tubular lock that I mentioned earlier that allow you to actually lock these panels in place. Let me just spin it around to the back to show you that there is more of that ventilation design. 2 more of the 70mm fans that I mentioned earlier, as well as the serial number and other various information about this product on the outside. Okay, we're on the left side of the case now. I'll remove the side panel and show you what it looks like. They've continued with the red aluminum design here of a cross right going through the middle of it, or an X I should say. And the cable management here for the power supply cables with a little M8 badge. The motherboard plate right behind that. Let me go ahead and flip to the other side and show you what it looks like on the interior of this particular chassis. So you can see things are fairly tightly adjoined to one another. They did quite a good job with space management here using the riser card on the PCI Express slot. But let me start on the top left here. You might already notice this is the optical drive. Let me move some of the cables out of your way so you can get a better look at it. This particular drive is a Lite-On slim slot loading DVD, CD rewritable drive. If you want to know more about the speeds of this drive, you can look it up. It's a DC8A2SH model number, so take a look at that if you want more information. So here's the power supply. It's a 450 watt power supply. We have the extension cable here going to the back of the case to provide power for it, as well as the kill switch when you're installing different components. At the top here, I'm actually going to try and fish these back out again. We have 2 8-pin PEG power connectors for your PCI Express graphics, as well as 4 more SATA, excuse me, let me move these out of the way, 4 more SATA power cables for your storage devices. There's actually a tray underneath here I'll get to in just a moment to show you exactly how you can configure the different storage devices in there with these. That's why they're up here, but then below there's actually an additional one underneath it, and you might think that's strange, except for the fact that there's actually another hard drive tray underneath this for a 2.5-inch drive. Of course, this SATA power connector would go to that. Now that being said, let me move along to the motherboard itself. I'll grab a pin so I have something to point with. The top left here, we do have our front panel connector. Probably kind of tough to see with that nest there. So here's the front panel connector. There we go. Next to that, we do have an LPC debug header. That particular header would be used so that you can connect a LED debug to that header and allow you to actually see whatever code it puts up in case there's any problems and you need to debug it, since there aren't any surface-mounted LEDs on this particular one to let you read what the debug is. Of course, a row of 6 SATA Rev 3 ports, allowing you to connect all your different devices. One of them already being used right now for the CD-ROM, leaving you the other, looks like another 5, yes, because there's one right below it, for the additional drives you could put in here. You probably can't really tell unless I move some stuff out of the way. This is the USB 3.0 header already being used for the front USB 3.0 ports that are already there. Below that, we do have the ATX 24-pin power connector and 2 SO-DIMM slots, giving you a total of 16 gigabytes of memory, or maximum I should say, and 8 gigabytes per stick. As I mentioned before, it's 1600, 1333, and 1066 megatransfer per second speeds. It's going to be capable of using with these. Let me click these back up again so you can see right beneath it. There is another fan header just below the SO-DIMM slots, and it's currently being connected to the case fans here at the bottom. Moving back up here to the center, we have the LGA 1150 socket, so that is going to be compatible with your 4th generation, aka Intel Haswell processors. And you're going to have a height of about 3 inches or so for CPU coolers, so that way if you end up being able to select this case in advance, you're going to know you have a little bit of height there to work with. Around the outside, you're going to see the power delivery system here. No heat sinks on that, but you can see the chokes. Let me turn the case slightly so you can see down here in the bottom corner here. In fact, I'll even unplug it. The PSU is giving you an 8-pin supplemental power for the CPU, but the socket itself is only 4, so it only utilizes 4 for this particular board on the Z87 M8. And right here is where you'd be connecting your CPU fan header. And if I move up to the middle of the board up here, move this cable out of the way, you can probably see the CMOS battery. So it will keep track of the time and all your settings in between power being shut down. Then above that, we have the Creative Soundcore 3D high-definition audio chip here that's going to give you all your high-definition audio you're going to need for gaming and whatnot. Next to that, we have ASRock's heatsink over the Z87 chipset, providing the core of this particular board. Above that, we have the UEFI BIOS, and to the left of that, we have a USB 2.0 header that's currently being used for what I think is probably that A-command multi-purpose controller at the front. Below that, we have another, no, that actually is, yes it is, that's a fan header for the top case fans, those other two 70mm fans, a clear CMOS jumper, and we have the mini PCI Express slot, excuse me, with the 802.11 AC Wi-Fi NIC with the Bluetooth 4.0 inside of it. Now, all that being said, I also, and it's probably difficult to see, I also have the PCI Express 16X Gen 3 slot that's right above it, but because the slot riser is actually in the way, you can't quite see it. So what I'm going to do is take apart some of this stuff and show you what it looks like beneath that. Okay, so there was a bit of disassembly required to get to this particular point, and there was also an RTFM moment where Paul and I just kind of scratched our heads, and to ASRock's credit, their manuals are excellent. So the pictograms were very helpful and able to get us, right to where we needed to be fairly easily. That being said, we did remove the riser card just to show you, in case you haven't ever seen a riser card before. That's just giving you the ability to attach this particular video card at a parallel to the motherboard itself. So of course it installs perpendicular to the board to allow that. Let me just do that really quickly. And then you would reattach the screws here to remount it back in again. But let me just spin it around here and show you what it looks like in the what I'm calling the video card and hard drive bay. And I say that because they've kind of created it for you. So you can see the slot there. You would attach the motherboard, you would attach the video card right to that slot and then screw it right into the expansion slot cover holes right there, allowing you to use your video card and maximize the space that ASRock's provided for you in this case. I do want to mention a couple things about video cards when you're selecting one. First off, the maximum length that you're going to be able to fit in here is 290 millimeters, a total of 11.4 inches for that video card, and a height of 137 millimeters, or about 5.4 inches. Maximum TDP for a video card on this particular setup is 200 watts, and just remember that it is only a 450 watt power supply, so you'll want to contact ASRock when you're deciding which video card to use, just to make sure that it's going to be compatible with this particular board. I'm just going to rotate this just ever so slightly to the right so you can see the hard drive sort of plate here, letting you be able to attach or install 4 total SSDs or 4 total 2.5-inch drives in this particular area. You could also unscrew this as well as a couple other screws in here and attach a 3.5-inch drive in the exact same place. Don't forget too, at the back side of the case, underneath the power supply, you still have a 2.5-inch drive area that you can attach. So you could still do a mechanical 3.5-inch drive and an SSD drive in this setup and still, get maximum gaming performance or just maximum performance out of such a small case. Also, just to mention it, you can actually see where the antennas connect for the NIC on the motherboard. Okay, everybody, that wraps up this overview of ASRock's M8 barebones system. If you liked what you saw today, go ahead and click the like button. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to one of our various YouTube channels out there, and we'll see you guys soon.